All right, you ready to get started? Okay. I'm going to mute you for now. Me, that's that. Participants. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble right now. All right. One live. hello. Welcome to Winning Wednesday. I'm so glad that you have joined us today. Today, we've got a very special co host. We'll talk about him when I bring him on here shortly. But before we start, I want you guys to make sure you're liking. I want to make sure you guys are sharing. So, like, share, so that we can get Winning Wednesday out so that it will help free somebody else. Again, Winning Wednesday is us taking what we have learn from our losses so that we can help empower another so that they can go through their hard times, go through their trials, go through their issues, and know that they can make it too. So before we bring on our co-host, as I have been doing for the last couple of weeks, I would like to highlight a business today, a small business, because we want to make sure that our small businesses are in a position to win. So today, this business that I will be highlighting is Perry and Company. This is a hair care line owned by an African American female here in the state of California. Her name is Tina Perry. Tina Perry, if you go to her website, you will hear or you can see the story about how she started, why she started Perry and Company hair care line. But this is a line product that I actually use for myself. Love it. A great product. I think my hair has not been healthier than it has been since I've started using this product. So if you have hair loss, if you have dry brittle hair, if you just want your hair to grow, if you want your hair to be in a better condition than it's been, I highly suggest using Perry & Co. Hair care products. You can find them on Facebook, you can find them on Instagram, and you can find them at their website, www.perryandcohairproducts.com. And also, fellas, if you need to use it for your beard, you can even use it for your beard. They are all natural products, and you will not be disappointed. You will not be disappointed. So again, check out Perry & Co. hair care products, and you will enjoy. You will enjoy. So it's time for Winning Wednesday. Again, like and share if you have had the opportunity. But today's co-host is somebody that is very dear to my heart. If you don't know me without knowing him. He's very dear to my heart. We've had a friendship that has evolved over the last several years, and I am honored to have him here today. And that is none other than my pastor. Yes, my pastor, Pastor LeaderSHEEP. Everybody, let us welcome him to Winning Wednesdays. Pastor Akins, are you there?
Hello. I am here.
How are you today, sir?
I am doing well. I am doing good.
Good. So first,
thank you for this opportunity. Time to share.
Thank you for sharing. For the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about relationships. We've been talking about marriages. And now today we are talking about divorce. And who other than would be capable to talk about divorce, not in a bad light. So for those of y'all that came to be messy today, this is not the Messy Winning Wednesday. We're not doing that here. We're not here to tell nobody's business. We're not here to shed anybody in a bad light. That is not what we're here for. But we are here to help those that are going through a divorce or who are trying to overcome a divorce. Divorce is inevitable. In some cases, inevitable. Divorce happens. It happens. And so how do we move on from divorce? And that is the purpose of today's show, moving on from divorce. So Pastor Akins, you're here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us who you are. I know who you are, but I'm not going to tell them who you are. You tell them who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Again, I don't know whether to say Sister Harris. I'm going to say what I know. Because I'm gonna say what I know. Thank you, Sister Harris, for this opportunity, this time to share on your platform. The invite, you didn't have to invite, and you put out a disclaimer not too long ago that you don't invite your friends, but you invite purposeful. So I'm grateful for this opportunity to be on here, and we would have still kept you as a member and would have still kept you as an administrator at the church had you not invited me on your platform, your show to share Winning Wednesday. But for those that don't know me, I'm a a native of Bakersfield. I have the privilege of living in Fresno, California now, and I've been here since I believe 2004, and I've made it home for myself. So I've been enjoying it. I've gotten planted and rooted here, and look to be here until the Lord says something different. While being here, I do pastor the Harvest Connection Church, right downtown Fresno, your neighborhood church. There, connecting people to God, not just to God, but connecting people with themselves, and then connecting them with each other, and then connecting them with resources. Connect for is what we're believing in and moving towards. So connecting for at the Harvest. And then I also have the honor of, well, not the honor, but I'm employed with the Department of Labor, working in a rehab program, vocational rehab, assisting veterans, working with them, helping them to get back into civilianhood, or get back into the way of living. So rehabilitation there. So that's pretty much it. I have beautiful children that keep me busy. Not only how you say biological children, but I have some spiritual children at the church that keep me busy as well. Again, I thank you for this opportunity to share on today.
So in other words, you're going to keep me as the administrator, even if I wasn't going to allow you on Winning Wednesday? Like I'm stuck.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Can't go nowhere if I
We'll
want
keep
to.
you around.
I think I quit every other week.
No.
You still
Okay.
got me there. You still dealing with my
Come
shenanigans.
on.
But thank you for coming today. So I know that you got to get back to work helping these veterans. And in this time, we are thankful that you still have a job. We are thankful
You
that
know,
you have a job, because not everyone has
yeah,
a testimony.
that's true.
So we'll get started. We'll get right in. So as a leader, I've watched you over the years, and you have been a leader in your own right over the years. And being a leader, it is difficult to go through divorce. And oftentimes as a leader, your divorce is rarely private. The pew can go through a divorce and nobody would know. But when you're a leader, you go through a divorce and everybody sees it, everybody's in it, everybody has an opinion about it, everybody has something to say. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you as a leader went through a divorce? What did divorce look like for you? What was divorce? Tell us your story of divorce.
Divorce for me was very painful. And I don't say painful as in painful in the sense of losing a spouse. Me okay?
Yes.
Hold on 1 second. Okay. Is that better?
Yes, a lot better.
Okay. The not just in the sense of losing a spouse, or losing a mate, or losing, once again, securities that come along with marriage. Just 1 moment. Connect my Bluetooth. It was working fine until I start messing with something.
Wouldn't that be technology? It wouldn't be technology if it didn't mess up until you needed it. There you go.
Right. There you go. So it wasn't painful as in the sense of losing a mate, or losing the securities that come along with marriage, losing where you live, losing house and all of that, losing your everyday connection with family, the sense of family. But it was painful as in it really put a dent in something that I was trying to prevent, which was a generation of, not a generation, but well, I guess you would say a generation of divorce. My parents, I come from a single home where my parents were divorced. They're doing well now. Mother's remarried and doing wonderful. Father's doing well, and what he's got going on. But I'd always made that stance growing up that I will never be divorced. I will never get divorced, because I did not want my children to suffer the things that I suffered. I didn't suffer a lot because I had my needs were met. Never had electricity turned off. Never had to go for food and anything like that. May not have had the very best of things to keep up with others, but I did have the things to keep up with others. I was blessed in that area. My mother provided for us very, very well as a single mother, and I come from a family of support all around. So I did not lack in those areas. Just the sense of having a mom and a dad in the home. That's what I was trying my best to avoid and to not have happen. So I declared it. And so when that happened, that was a blow that was more painful than I think um, losing the spouse and losing the things that come along with the divorce. I think that was the most painful.
So there was an emotional trauma because it was literally when you go through a divorce, divorce literally means death of. It's one relationship, in a sense, dying. It's one part of you that is dying or has died, and you having to re-identify, you having to recalibrate, you having to, you didn't talk about necessarily the finances because, I mean, the finances aren't an issue. We have rich people that divorce all the time. It's not necessarily
Right.
the finances. It's not necessarily of having to relocate, but it's actually a part of you, a part of your desires, a part of your heart is being ripped apart. And divorce is ugly. When you're ripping something apart, it's painful. It's painful.
Right.
Just as you stated. And so with that being said, I'm sure there was a lot of emotional trauma because you're going through a divorce as a leader. What did that look like? I'm a leader. People are looking at me. I'm leading. Now, and not only that, you were called to pastor as well. So were you pastoring during the divorce, before the divorce, after the divorce? What did that look like?
The closing of the ending of the marriage is when I moved out into ministry. Prior to the ending of the marriage, I do believe and I know when God called me into pastoring. It was during the time that I was still married, and I've said this before, so it's nothing new. During the time that the Lord did call me to pastor, He had things set up to where I could walk into pastorship by way of walking into ministry. When I say pastorship, I don't look at it as in walking into the title pastor, but I look at pastorage walking into the role of actually pastoring, actually ministering to people, spending time with people, really doing ministry, not the title of it, but the actual duties of pastoring, being a servant. Those opportunities were made available to me. And it was so much of a soul to where it was literally almost like a turnkey ministry. You just walk right in. Building provided, means to retain the building was provided. It was a great opportunity for ministry. Um, I know God had worked it, but I chose not to do it due to other ministry obligations. Me being married at the time, I was working with my ex-wife's family or father in ministry, and that's where my heart was. And I forgoed the opportunity of the call that I believe God was calling to yet work and serve in ministry where I was already working. And I believe at that point is when I began to see a turn in my marriage, as in some things I had before God. I mean, you could be doing something for God, but yet have what you're doing for God before God, if that makes sense. What you're doing is a godly thing, but it's above God. You can't do that. You have to do and work. The Bible says those that are led by the Spirit are the sons of God. And that was a time where I missed that call. I missed that opportunity for ministry to do other things in ministry. And again, that's where the shifting was, or the turning was, when I began to see more so of a disruption in the marriage, I'll say. On both sides, my side and the other party sides, there were more disruptions. And then our way of coming together uh, seemed to still be there, but it was a clashing. My interest was one way, her interest was another way, yet still heavenly mind, all of that, but just going two different ways on a natural level. Oftentimes when you or people divorce, they're not divorcing for sinful reasons or infidelity reasons or other addictive reasons. It could just be that on a natural level, the natural level is not connecting. And that's where things begin to happen, and the disconnect begin to happen there on the natural. So that's where I noticed after I did not accept that call, that's when things start happening. So up until the end of uh, the ministry, when the marriage did end, I took some time away, took some time to sit and evaluate. I didn't jump into ministry right away, didn't jump into pastoring right away, but I took some time and I sat for a moment to get me together and to see where I was. And then that's when the opportunity again arose for me to do ministry a second time. And it was also almost like one of those instances of a Samson, to where you had it, you lost it, and the Lord gave it to you again. This time, you don't want to miss what God has given you or what God is calling you into, because you may not have a third opportunity. If He gives it to you once, take it. If He gives it to you twice, really, really take it and know that that's God's grace and God's mercy. And so I wasn't going to take a third. I launched out on that second to begin to formalize the ministry that God had given me from years before. So the call to pastor had been there for years, and the way of doing ministry had been there for years. And so when it came time to do it, that's when I began to, or I moved into ministry. So it was a little bit after the marriage ended. I say the marriage ended legally, the divorce ended about a year later, but oftentimes we know marriages end before the ink is even found to the paper, you know. So that's my story on ministry. I was coming to the end of the closing or the solidifying of the divorce when I moved into pastoring. So it was in a sense over and done with prior to.
So there's one thing that I want to touch on, actually two things that I want to touch on. You talked about being in the marriage and hearing a call from God. You know that you were called to pastor. And a lot of times we put things before God. And I often say anything we put before God now becomes our responsibility to maintain. God is not responsible. God is not obligated to bless anything that we put before Him. So that was one of the points that I heard, that, hey, we've got to keep, and we talked about that last week, we've got to keep God at the forefront of whatever relationship, whatever marriage we're in, whatever business partnership in, because this isn't just about pastors. This is about leaders. Anybody that has to lead an organization, anyone that has to lead a team, anyone that has to lead staff, anyone that has to lead members. Going through a divorce is rough. And so this is more of an encouragement to leaders, community leaders, any type of leadership. This is an encouragement to you. But anytime, like I said, you kind of didn't put God first. It was at some point you lost sight of who God, what should have been the priority. And it doesn't mean that either one of the parties were bad. So before y'all run and tell that, run and tell we said that. Ain't nobody wrong. That's not what was said. Nobody is wrong. Run and tell that. What we are saying is there are times that we recognize and realize our error, our wrong, where we went wrong in the process, and what we have to do differently moving forward. Another thing you said was, it felt like you were Samson, where God, it was taken away, but here is your opportunity yet again to take that chance to do what God has called you to do. So talk about that a little bit more. What were some of the emotional battles? Because I could just imagine, sometimes you got to silence that inner voice. Are people going to come to my church? Are people going to follow me? Are people going to watch are people going to support me? And I went through this public divorce. Talk about some of the struggles you went through as a leader and trying to start ministry.
I've never been, I'm just going to say it. I've never been a people opinion driven person to an extent when it comes down to positive things, things that could be beneficial, things that could be, admonish us in the good light, then I take note, I take thought. But I've never been one to act upon, or of course you think, what are people thinking, what are people saying, and you have that little apprehension when you go to meetings, when you go to conferences, when you just do ministry, when you show up at a church. But I never allowed those things to those thoughts to keep me from ministry. There were times where hurt was there. I can remember myself right now leaving um, the home, and uh, this is the time when we were still in the same home, and still separated, though coming to an end. And I was leaving. I left early because I had to go by another friend of mine's church, and it wasn't that I had to go by his church for any particular reason or anything, but it was my spirit man needed to get to his church, and it was an early service that he does. And I can remember crying all the way to his church. Seems like the longest drive, but that's when everything really hit me at that moment. And it was uh, I guess, a people experience. Like, okay, people are looking, people are talking, people are wondering, people are saying this, people are speculating. Because one, it was I wouldn't say a hidden or a secret divorce, but it was it wasn't aired. If you got the business of why I divorced, then you don't know why I got divorced. Why I've been divorced. You just got speculation, which is not true. But it was quiet. The divorce was quiet. It was just know who we are. That's why people knew it was a divorce, because who we were. They didn't know what or the reason behind it or anything. But I still had that thought on me, like, okay, some people know, some people do know. This is going to hurt the ministry. And so I had that one cry, that breaking moment of family being gone, again, security being gone, um, living arrangements being gone, all those things that come along with the marriage being gone. It hit me just that one instant, that one moment is what I had. And when I got to his church, the message was just for me. It got me together, got me where I needed to be. And I left there and went to my service, and did what God had given me to do, in my service and in my ministry. But it was that moment that I had, that breaking moment, to where I did have those thoughts of what are the people saying, the struggling, the emotion. What are my family saying? You have family members that, still ask you during that time, how is such and such doing? It's like, oh, where have you been? Or, like, I know you know what's going on, but you're going to ask anyway, kind of situations. But yeah, just had that one moment, and that was it. Again, I've never been people driven. Oftentimes I'll strive to do what people say I'm not going to be able to do, because I know my God is just that great or powerful, and anything that I go to do is God driven, which is why I like to attend myself or think of myself as a son of God, because I'm going to do what he leads me to do. And if I do that, he's going to assure that the task is, completed successfully according to his metric system, not our metric, but according to his metric.
Can you go into a little bit more detail about that? You said according to God's metric system, because sometimes our metric system doesn't align to God's. We think that we quote the scripture all the time. If I delight myself in him, he will give me the desires of my heart. And oftentimes our desires aren't in God's will. And that's how we end up oftentimes with the heartbreak. Can you go a little bit more deeper into God's metric system? Talk about that.
Yeah. And to work backwards to that question, anytime you ask amiss, you may not get what you ask for, because you ask amiss. You ask out of the will of God. So you cannot ever get mad with God when you ask for something that's out of his will. And either you go to try to make it happen, and it doesn't work out well. Guess what? That wasn't according to God's will. So you asked out of his will, and then you got what you asked for. Now you got to deal with it. Don't ask God to try to fix it now. Don't ask God to, bring you out of it. Sometimes he will allow you to sit in the situation that you have created for yourself. He'll allow you to sit in that, so that way you can learn It was David who said it was good that I was afflicted, because it was in my afflictions that I say that I got my mind back. The Bible says that he learned of his statutes, but it was good for me to have been afflicted, because that's when my thinking came back. That's when my thinking got right. One of the things about being divorced that I've learned is that you find yourself. First off, you lose yourself, but then you find yourself. And I'll come back to that later. But the metric system that God has, we have our own metric system that we think things ought to be measured to, and what we measure success by, what we measure accomplishment by. We have our own level. Yet still, God has His own level of metric and accomplishment and success as well. And if we do things according to, or learn what those metrics are, learn what God's will is, learn what His accomplishment levels are, I believe a lot of us wouldn't be so stressed. Watch this. A lot of our marriage wouldn't be so endangered upon divorce if we went by God's metric. But oftentimes we go by our own or other people's metric, and it messes us up because we're putting too much strain on something that was not meant to be strainful. It was not meant to be stressful. It was not meant to be hurt, but because we added all these other things, these our own thought-provoking things on top of, we've made our own metric system that God is not us by. That's just my personal. That's not a doctrinal or a theological belief. That's my own personal footnote, side note, right there for those scholars that are watching.
It's the truth. We are trying to hold on to something that God didn't want us to have in the first place. And then we're mad because we're broken and we're bleeding. And then we want to blame God, get mad at God, then get mad at the church and leave the church.
Right.
When the church didn't do it, God didn't do it. In actuality, you did it because you didn't want to see God, and you didn't want to do things in God's way, in God's time. It's almost like I tell my kids, oh, you want it bad enough? You keep throwing a tantrum bad enough, I'm going to give it to you. You're going to find out that you really didn't want it. And a lot of times I do believe that that's what God does. He allows us, because we didn't throw a tantrum so long, you know what? Let me go ahead and get this to you, because you're going to find out why I didn't want you to have it in the first place. And it doesn't mean that either party is a bad person. It doesn't mean that either party did wrong. It just was not God's design for that to be, that relationship, that job, that opportunity, whatever it is, it wasn't God's design, but you wanted it bad enough. So He gave it to you, so you saw why you didn't want it. So let me back up a little bit even more. When we were talking about the opinion of others. To be a pastor, to be a leader, because you're not just a pastor, you're also a community leader as well. To be a leader, to lead sheep, it is a very daunting task. It can be tedious, it can be tiresome, it can be, I heard a pastor say earlier this week, he's married with kids, he said that pastoring is probably he's at the loneliest place he's ever been in his life. And he's married. And I'm thinking, you got a wife that you could roll over to. But there is a loneliness that only pastors can identify, another pastor can identify with. And oftentimes you're lonely. A lot of times you have burdens that you have to bear. How do you manage being a pastor and being divorced? Because now that you're divorced, everybody think you got all the time in the world, and you can come just because I call, just because I have a need at 12:35 in the morning. You're the pastor, you're obligated to answer the phone. It's holidays, and you, even though you was there for everybody else, they didn't even invite you to the family barbecue for the holiday. How do you manage being a leader, leading sheep, leading people? How do you manage being a leader and being divorced? Is that a struggle? Talk about that a little bit for us.
Well, number one, I'm never alone. I never have a lonely moment. I never have a lonesome moment. My phone doesn't stop ringing. The texts don't stop coming in. The messages don't stop coming in. I had a member message me last night, and he know who he is, about 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and Monday, Tuesdays are my day off. So I didn't respond. It wasn't an emergency, but there's always some type of call or some type of something to where I'm never alone. I never have lonely moments. I'm there as the catch-all. I'm there for whatever is needed, right? That's the I guess you'd say the politically correct answer, I guess.
No, tell
Um,
us the truth, sir.
but the truth is, I have those moments to where I'll share this. I'm in the house and I'm just calling out my kid's name, and I'm just, hey, do this, or hey, what you doing? Because being alone, I'm not crazy.
You
Being
sure?
alone, you have those moments to where it's like, man, somebody need to be here, or you have them instances like where, you know what, I I, sh- I don't want to be alone. I want to have people that I can go places with, or I want to go do something, and I don't want to do it, by myself. It could be a boring, whatever it is. It could be a walk. It could be whatever. But as a leader, um, you have to be careful of where you are, who you're with, and because the scripture, let not your good, all of that, how it rolls, and we people, us people, can be a judgmental people, for a better way of phrasing it, and so we have to be careful as leaders. So I I've learned that with divorce, and I think I'm hitting on your question with this. I've learned that divorce, time is on your side.
Mm.
Time is on your side. And I say time is on your side because, unfortunately, the negatives that have been placed in your life, and I say the negatives that have been placed in your life, like the time away from that family structure, to where you used to do the nightly chores with the kids, we used to have the dinners, kids, and all of that. Of course, you still have them, but you don't have them 7 days a week, because the time away with mom and dad, you don't have that. You don't have that 24/7 like you used to. So the time that you do have to yourself, time is on your side. So that's the time where you turn that negative into a positive, and you begin to fill whatever void that you got in your life with that time. If it's to go back to school, if it's to further yourself in ministry, prayer time, whatever it is, time is on your side. As a divorcee, you have to think of that. When the kids are gone with the other parent, that's your time to accomplish what you need to do. That's your time to enjoy life. So don't look at being alone or isolated as a negative thing. Me, I don't have a problem being alone. That's one thing I learned after my divorce. I learned how to go to the movies by myself. I learned how to go out of town on vacation by myself. I learned how to shop by myself. I found it better that I can enjoy a dinner, a meal, better by myself than with anyone else suggesting to me what I should or should not eat. So you have to find peace with yourself. Enjoy that time to yourself. A lot of marriages don't work and didn't work because you didn't know who you were. And actually you had a misrepresentation. Why? Because you had to adapt to certain things that were not you. You had to be certain things that you may not even want it to be. You had to do certain things that you may not even want it to do. So guess what? Now you can do what you want to do. You can be free. You can reintroduce yourself to yourself. Guess what? If I didn't like uh a certain food or something, guess what? I don't have to eat it no more. I can find out what I like, and I can, make this work for me. Yeah, it's about you. After you get divorced, you need to learn who you are. Don't you ever let nobody tell you that, no, it's not about you. No, it's about you, because you need to learn who you are, and you need to learn what you like, and you don't need to settle. You need to make sure that you can be totally satisfied with yourself and learn yourself, so that way when you go to meet somebody else, you're not putting on a front, you're not putting on any lies, you're not putting on any fakes or facade. You are yourself. So guess what? Unfortunately, because I'm coming out of a divorce, you get to meet me for who I am. You get to meet me for the real me. Because the first time I put on some fakes and some facades, that wasn't me. I didn't like to do it. It didn't last. It was over with. Guess what? I don't have to do that no more. Now I can be me. If I don't want to go to a family dinner, guess what? I'm not going. If I don't want to go on a family trip, I'm not going. Why? Because I'm going to tell you this up front. I think I heard y'all talk about it. You and Pastor Rucker talked about it in y'all session. Y'all talked about you have to explain to him, okay, look, I like to wear certain wigs. This is the wigs that I like to wear. I like long wigs. I like to change my wig every week, every day, whatever it is. You were upfront about that. That's what you have to do, or that's what the men have to do as well. Say, hey, look, you know what? I'll compromise to a certain degree, but this is what you need to know. This is what I like. This is what I'm probably going to keep doing, you know, because I have a right to do it. Now, you could choose not to like that. And if you don't, hey, it's all good and well. You're not who, needs to be with me, because now I get to be me. Now I really get to be me, uncandid. It's not being rude. It's not being callous, not being cold. But hey, I'd rather for you to meet me so you can decide, do I really want to get to know this person or do I not? Can I accept him for who he is? And then you get to benefit from the experience of knowing me. It's a blessing to get to know me. It's a blessing to be my friend. It's a blessing to have connection with me, fellowship with me. You know, you're administrator at the church. It's a blessing to know me and to be a friend of mine.
I'm so thankful that Zoom has the mute option.
Lord, have mercy.
So
next question. Moving on.
It's a blessing to know you. If anybody saw my timeline a couple days ago, you saw the whole concert that he had with my child. And that is just about sums up what it's like to know Pastor LeaderSHEEP. You're going to get uncandid comments. You're going to get random concerts. And you're going to get a whole lot of tasks to do. Because I was forced, I recorded we ain't going to talk about that. We're going to get back on topic. It is a blessing to go back to what you were saying. It's a blessing to know you, not you. I'm not saying you. I'm thankful for you, but I'm going to talk about you. As a divorcee, you have to know that you are a blessing, and you have to know that even with the divorce, you're not a failure. You had a life. You had a event that happened to you, but you didn't have a lifestyle of failure. It was one event that happened to you. Right. That was it. It's not your lifestyle. You don't live a lifestyle. Now, if you choose to live a lifestyle of failure, that's a whole other story. But those that are at the harvest, the pastor is on us very diligently. No, we don't have to live like this. Stop living below your means. Stop living beneath your privileges. God has called us to more. God has called us to greater. And you've got to know that. And I think a lot of times we don't recognize who we are. I can speak for myself. When I found myself in my second marriage, I knew the day that I got married that the marriage wasn't going to work. I knew it. And the reason why I knew it is because I was getting married from a broken place. I wasn't getting married by knowing who I was. I was getting married by thinking, I'm divorced. Ain't nobody gonna want a divorced woman. Ain't nobody gonna want a divorced woman with kids, because I had 2 small kids at the time. Like, I don't have any other option. So I'm forced. He didn't force me, because I always had the opportunity to say no. But it was almost feeling like, because of my low self-esteem, because of the broken place that I was in, I found myself in a marriage that I would have never been in had I known who I really was. So it's very important, as you said, to get to know who you are, get to know what you like, get to know, because once you get to the next marriage, some people write off marriage. People ask me, are you going to get married again? I am. I will one day. Maybe not today, but one day, because marriage wasn't the problem. It was the people that were in the marriage that was the problem. God ordained marriage. Marriage is a blessing from God. Marriage is beautiful when you do it God's way. But you got to know who you are. You got to know what you've been called to do. You got to know what your purpose. And I think you hit on that earlier, and we talked about that last week. Knowing what you are called to do, knowing who you are, because you'll wake up one morning and realize we're not even on the same path. And I think you preach that all the time. And I give you that opportunity to say that 2 people can sleep in a bed and be divided or something. I'll let you go ahead. How does that go? Tell us that statement.
Two people can ride in the same car together and be divided. 2 people can live in the same house together and be divided. 2 people can sleep in the same bed together and still be divided. Until we get together. That's the only way you're going to make it. We know the saying, it takes 2 people to make a marriage. It only takes one of them to break it. It takes one of them to end it. When one stops working at it, when one stops trying to keep it together, then it's definitely headed for failure. It's definitely headed for failure. But it takes two people together to make the marriage work, to make the marriage stay together.
So like you said, it takes two people to get married and only one person to get divorced. One person could wake up one morning and say, you know what? I'm done. We done with this. Let's go. You go your way. I like Abraham and Lot. You pick a way to go. I'm going a whole other way. And with statistics tell us nearly 43% of marriages, first-time marriages, will end in divorce. And for leaders, it's nearly 50% because of the burden. It takes a special person to be married to a leader. It takes a special person, whether y'all agree with it or not, because they have to handle the 11 o'clock text messages that are irrelevant. They got to handle getting up in the middle of the night. They got to handle the long meetings. So the spouse, it takes a special spouse to deal with a leader in its own right. So with that being said, like I said, 43% of marriages, first-time marriages, end in divorce. 50, and it's increased for leaders. 60% of second-time marriages end in divorce. 70% of third-time marriages end in divorce. So it sounds to me we're not getting better at marriage. You would think you would learn the lesson, but we clearly not learning the lesson. The only thing we're getting better at is divorce, not marriage. So encourage somebody today. What is a lesson that you have learned in divorce and being a leader? What are some of the things that you have learned to help get you through to where you are now, to a healed place? What is a lesson that you have learned?
For a divorcee, you're talking about for someone that's divorced, or well, the first thing that I think you would need to learn, or that I learned, and you hit on it, divorce is not my identity. Divorce is not who I am. Divorce is not my makeup. Divorce is not the person that how you say, my daily person. Divorce, as you said, is just an incident, or it's an event. It's an experience, something that you went through, and you are now out of it. Oftentimes, when we go through a divorce, people make that your identity, and they turn you into that. And I say that because once you say divorced, it's like there's a whole thing that comes along with that. Like you said, failure resounds behind divorce. You're a failure. Why? Because you are divorced. Watch this. It was no problem with saying you're single. It was no problem with saying, yeah, I'm single, or checking the I'm single box. But now that you have to check the divorce box, how many of y'all do check the divorce box? Or do you revert back to the single box because you don't want to deal with the ridicule that comes along with divorced, or the D word? So we have to walk around with D word. I've learned not to do that. So when people ask me the questions that you may ask about, no, that's just an event. That's just something that happened. That's not me. Who I am. The title is not necessarily who I am. That's just an event that I've gone through. So I would encourage anyone, first off, to not feel that you are a failure. You are not a failure. You have not failed. You have not failed. Your divorce or your marriage has ended, but you have the opportunity to have a happy marriage again. You have the opportunity to uh, um, plain and simple, to get married again, and to have a happy marriage, and to enjoy that marriage. It doesn't mean that you failed, you can't do it again, it's unfixable. No, it ended with that other person, and y'all go your separate ways, and it is what it was. You learned what you learned through the pain, because even in pain, there's a lesson to be learned with pain. You learn for the next one, and now you know how to better yourself, and to make changes that you need to make, so that way you can secure a happy marriage the next go round. Or watch this, a happy life the next go round. Doesn't mean that you necessarily have to get married again. No, unless you're one that needs to, wants to, choose to, then go for it. But make sure that you're securing the happiness that you need to have to be happy. I won't say to have a successful marriage, because really, what's a successful marriage? What's a successful marriage? That you stay together. I see people that stay together that argue, fight. That's a successful marriage because on paper, or because they just didn't do a divorce. I mean, they may as well for what they're doing. I mean, so so I mean, to be happy, to have a happy marriage is what I would call a successful marriage. If you just want to go that route, for those that want to use words, then okay, make sure that you that know that you're not a failure. You can do it again, and you can do it better the next time, better the second go around.
So there is life after divorce.
Definitely, there's
There
more
is.
life after divorce. There's a second wind. The Bible speaks of Ezekiel, shall these bones
Oh,
live again?
here
Oh
we go.
yeah, these
You got
these
to turn
bones
everything into a sermon, Pastor.
shall live
Oh,
again. I'm sorry, you was getting a preacher pastor when you came on here. I'm sorry, I know this is not supposed to be so churchy. But one thing that I did want to bring up, I'm sorry, I know you're probably getting off or whatever you're gonna do. We'll go to the next. We keep going. It's up to you.
hey,
But I did want to bring out
just run it though. You running it.
what happened.
What I want to
Oh,
do.
okay.
Go ahead.
Gotcha. One thing that I did want to point out, which is this is the tragic part of you were giving out statistics, and I was trying to pull them real quick as you were talking because I ran across it, and the very sad thing about it, I'll pull them and I'll send them to you. You can post them again, or anybody can pull them up. But the one thing that we don't talk about is that the divorce rate is rising in the church.
Yeah.
It's rising in the church, where marriage is um, marriage is honorable. Marriage is a covenant ordained by God, and the numbers are increasing. Not only are the numbers increasing, but get this, it's turning into a normal thing. It's turning into a everyday conversation when I say that. It doesn't have the effect that it used to have. Like when you hear the word divorce and in church, it's like, oh my God. But now it's like,
Oh,
oh,
okay.
yeah, we're becoming nonchalant too. And I think that's an attack. Now, I know that's an attack of the enemy, that we are allowing him to trample over us when it comes down to fortifying our unity, our unifying, our remaining together covenant, keeping covenant, because marriage is a covenant. I do believe that every marriage is salvageable, every marriage is savable, if you go by the covenant. If you don't break the marriage vows that we may have created. I know God has given us the covenant, but we have put together wording for marriage vows. If you keep those vows, I believe that your marriage it should stay together. It's concrete. Those are vows that will keep you. If you do those vows, if you act out those vows, don't just say them because the wedding day is not the marriage. That's not the your marriage. It's just an event. The wedding is just an event, just an occasion that you can
That's just the
buy
summer.
a whole bunch of food for people that you really don't even like, don't even know, and go from there. But I mean, you don't have to. Uh, we've got to get back to that covenant, to where the covenant that we made, we keep our vows. Now, of course, I'm not saying stay in, and this is could be another subject in itself. Stay in marriages where you've got abuse going on. Jesus even talks about getting out of marriages where there's physical abuse, or abuse of that nature. Of course, you use some sense. Where we walk in faith, we don't walk in foolishness. You hit me one time, you might get to hit me a second time, but there's gonna be too many more others than that. There's gonna be too many more. But you have to be wise. But I believe that if we get back to our covenant, really holding to our covenant, really loving each other, knowing each other, building a relationship, learning that person before. It's like this. When you get a car, it's some cars nowadays you don't have to do oil changes, but they got other checks that you got to do on them. You gotta. I don't care if it's Tesla, whatever. It may not have an oil change, but get this: there's always a checkup period.
Maintenance.
Even before you buy that car, you look at it, you test drive it. You don't test drive. You don't test drive.
What you
And
mean you
to
don't
test,
What
you
you mean?
don't test
Oh, you
drive.
gotta make it plain.
Y'all know
No, no,
what I'm
no.
talking about.
We ain't got no
You
kids
don't
in the
test
room. My
drive
kid is in his room with the door
vehicles.
closed. What does test drive mean? Because test drive, from some people's perspective, test drive simply means let's act as if we're married to see if we can get married, to see if what marriage looks like. Let's act as a family to see if a family is really what we want. So what does test drive mean?
No, I have my own philosophy on that. There's no one. You don't need to test drive that. You don't need to live together to help. We need to help save money. We need to help. You know what? If you can't live on your own and pay your own bills, and she can't live on her own and pay their own bills, then y'all don't need to get married. Y'all don't need to come together to try to pay the bills or to see if y'all can come together and pay the bills. Somebody need to be able to stand on their own. Maybe I took it too a little far right there, but I'm just saying. I believe y'all said it last week. You one whole and one whole come together to make one, not half and half. Then you got one. That's not what we're doing. We're coming together as a whole. I'm coming whole. That means I've got myself together. I'm where I need to be, right? According to God's metric now, and then according to your relational metric. The two of you have to have a level of agreement on, okay, what are you bringing to the bringing? Okay, now we're going to put that, we're going to make it, do what we got to do and build an empire. Got it? But when I say that, I mean, because you got people using that excuse, we moved together, cohabitating and shacking up, if you want to say that. No, we don't recommend that. We don't believe in that. I don't recommend that. I don't believe in that. I believe that you need to set yourself up for success by way of making sure you got yourself together spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially. All of those things come into play. If those things don't come into play, then you're going to have some issues in your marriage that you could have addressed. Watch this. At marriage preparation. We don't talk marriage preparation anymore, period. We've got to go back to marriage preparation. Are you prepared to get married? Are you prepared to spend the rest of your life with someone? Because that's what it is. It's not okay, let's get married for 6 years, 10 years, and then let's divorce. Mm-mm. Marriage is supposed to be 50, 60, 70 till death do you part, is what marriage is supposed to be. It's a team effort. It's working together. You and that one person, not the family, not the cousins, not the in-laws, none of them. It's you and that one person. And sometimes you have to block not sometimes, all the time, you have to block those out of your relationship and just keep you and the other person in it, along with God. God is the only third person that you need in there. But going back to what I was saying, marriage preparation. Prior to getting the car, you do your research on the car. You find out what it is that you want. You check it out. Then once you get it, you keep those maintenance going. That monthly maintenance, or that 3,000 maintenance checkup, the oil change every 3,000, all of that. You keep that going. Same way with the marriage. Same way with the marriage. Oftentimes we think marriage counseling is prior to getting married, but guess what? Sometimes you got to have marriage counseling within the marriage. You got to do it in the middle of the 3 years, in the middle of the 5 years, in every, however you want to, you need it, but you need to have that time where you talk to someone, I want to say spiritual, but you talk to someone that God leads you to talk to. If you can't find nobody that God leads you to talk to, you go talk to somebody that's got a degree, that's psychologically trained and astute, that knows behaviors, knows how to deal in licensed marriage and family therapy, to make sure when you when you go to get an oil change, do you go to just any Joe Blow to get an oil change? No.
Some people do.
Some people do, and that's right. And they leave because they had watered down oil, or because they didn't get an air filter. Now their car is smelling a certain way and they wonder why. Well, because your air filter didn't get changed. You got partial change. You didn't get the full oil change. No, you go to trained people. I don't understand. let me pause right there. Um,
Come on, Pastor, let loose. You only got a few
no,
minutes left, so you might as well just let it all hang out.
you've got to go. I teach this in Bible study. You've got to go to one or two people that have the knowledge or people that have the experience. Now, you might say, well, Pastor, that's hitting back at you because you can't tell me about marriage. But guess what? One who has been divorced can tell you about marriage. And I'm not even talking to you and telling you what you don't do or what you're not supposed to do, because I can easily tell you what you need to do. Why? Because the Holy Ghost, I know this ain't no church show, but God will give you what to say to those in those areas that that's why you got to have a relationship with the Lord.
Is that your mic drop?
Yeah, I'm not gonna turn your show. You told me not to turn it into a church, so I'm not gonna turn it into a church.
And everybody that know us know you do what you want to do. I don't have no say, so I just gotta follow along. Everybody know that. So why you being different now?
I'm being respectful of your platform.
Well, thank you,
I
Pastor.
want to be encouraging of the people.
Thank you,
want people
Pastor.
to be encouraged.
But I wanted to even go a little bit deeper, and we're gonna wrap up. You talked about those that are divorced don't need to be given. Are you drinking wild cherry Pepsi? It's hot. You should be having some water. It's 104 degrees outside. You need some water.
Let me help you real quick. This is why I said at the beginning of this show, when you're single and you go by yourself to do places and search stuff, you can get what you want to get, and you can have the freedom to drink what you want to drink, eat what you want to drink, and go from there.
God bless you. God bless you.
Praise the Lord.
In Harvest, he gonna put us on a fast this week because he got to go to the doctor.
Got to make sure y'all physically fit.
Back to what we were talking about. So you made me lose my train of thought. We were talking about being divorced. So us being divorced, because we've both been divorced, folks believe that we cannot give marital advice. And I do disagree. I do agree with what you said. Not only the Holy Spirit, but the Bible tells us what marriage should look like. The Bible tells us how a husband should treat his wife. The Bible tells us the role of a woman. And if we're following biblical principles, there is no reason why a single person can't give advice. Now, would they be the person that I run to all the time? Probably not, because I need to talk to, or you need to talk to, we need to talk to someone that has been in that thing, because people have been in it for 50 years and they're still miserable. Based on because they're married, they're supposed to give advice. No, they've been married for 50 years and he got 6 kids by 6 women that ain't his wife. No, I'm not going to talk to them. There's really not much that they can tell me if we want to look at it that way. But the Bible gives us specific guidelines what a man's role is, that a man is supposed to love Christ. As Christ loved the church. A man is supposed to love his wife as Christ loved the church. And we going back to even cohabitation. Christ went and said, I go away to prepare a place. That means he's going somewhere away. Then he's going to come back and get you. Ladies, he's got to go prepare a place for you. You're not moving him into your house. That's not Christ-like. That's not what the Bible declares. There is guidelines and when you do things in a biblical principle, when you do things, like you said, according to that manual, if I follow the manual for the maintenance for my car, then my car should last me for years to come. Same thing with a marriage. When you follow the biblical principle, your marriage will last for years to come. And unfortunately, like you were talking about earlier, the statistics for Christian marriages are increasing. And we're getting better at divorce and we're not getting better at marriage. And partly I think that's because we're so quick to get something for the gram. We quick to get something for the Insta stories. We quick to get something that looks good for Snap, but we're not quick to get something that is good for our purpose, that is good for our lives, that will be a good father figure for our children, or a good mother figure. Doesn't mean that because, yes, you're divorced, and if you got children, now there's going to be somebody else. It doesn't mean that you're replacing that parent. You can never replace that parent. Ever. You can never be that person, that child's mother or father, but you can be a mother figure or father figure to them. But I think it's because we've gotten so quick to do something for Snap that we feel like we got to get it done. We got to get married, and we're not focusing. We're focusing more on the wedding and not focusing on the marriage, like you said, and preparing for marriage and doing things godly. And again, like I said at the beginning, we doing things our own way. and then expecting God to come in and bless it. We left God out of the dating process. We left God out of the engagement process. We even left God out of the wedding, if we get real. And now we're married and we're talking about, oh God, fix it. Now, can he fix it? He absolutely can. But why you want him to fix it now? You said in the beginning of the whole rest of the process that you didn't need God. What you need him now for? Go ahead and do it yourself. Fix it yourself. So I think that as Christians, especially Christians, we have got to keep God at the forefront of the dating process, of the engagement process, of the courtship process, and of the wedding and the marriage, so that we can get God's results. And marriage is not okay. It's not. That was not God's design for family. It was not. I was talking to someone earlier today, and they were talking about women are so independent now that you guys have a man because you choose to have a man. I said, oh no, maybe women that you know, but I need a man. And they said, no, you don't need. Yeah, I need a man because that's the way God designed it. Now, does that take away from my ability? Absolutely not. But God's design was, he called the women the weaker vessel. I need a man. He has a role. He has a role to play. I can never be a man. I can never be the father to both my children. They have a daddy, and he has a role to teach them. I can never be a man. So in a sense, do I need a man? Absolutely. But I'm going to live life without one. I'm not going to die, and it's not going to be the end of the world. I'm not going to travel. I'm not going to make no money without one. But do I need a man based on God's design? Yeah. I think you froze there.
Yeah. Based on God's design, yes. But unfortunately, I think that's where men have to reposition themselves. Men, unfortunately, not all men, a vast majority have been absent to where, and we all know this, women have had to be more independent, and they've had to do more of the dual roles, not just the dual roles, but just doing the role, period, to where we have forced women to become non-dependent upon men. Not all men have done that, but a lot of men have done that, to where they have put women in that position to where they have to have that mindset. I don't need you, and you're right. You don't need me or need a man to a certain extent, but there is a point, at some point, to where you are going to need that real man, that's going to be the man, that's going to have you to be the woman, to where you can really serve your rightful position as the woman, and not a dual position. That's just me.
Very true. So one last question, we're going to get out of here. I do want to respect your time. Give us some advice, someone that is going through divorce, someone that is coming freshly out of divorce. Give them a word of encouragement to help them get through this tough
time. Person in ministry, pastor, or what are we talking about?
Whatever God puts.
So I think this would be for everyone. I think you need to take time to, especially in ministry, I think you need to take time to heal, because you are hurt. There is a hurt that has come into place. If you are a person of faith and a believer, or whether you are not, that separation, that divorce, it is going to cause some hurt, some anxiety there, and you need to take that time to get yourself together before you do anything. When you get on an airplane and you sit in that seat, and the stewardess comes with her safety message, she says, in case of an accident or the plane begins to go down, whatever, your air mask, we lose oxygen, your air mask is going to drop down. When that air mask drops down, you put your mask on first before you help your neighbor or someone else around you. Why? You're no good if the oxygen is leaving the aircraft. If you're trying to help other people without putting on your oxygen, of course you're going to run out of oxygen, and you are going to now pass out and become dead. And probably those who you could have helped will now pass out and become dead because you didn't take care of yourself first. I say that because there was a period during my divorce where pastoring, even after pastoring, I had to sit down. I had to take a sabbatical because I noticed myself beginning to bleed on the sheep. I began to what I was going through begin to come out in messages, begin to come out in my teachings, and that's not good. When you bleed on the sheep, now you got sheep. Now you got blood on the sheep, and so the wolves are able to attack those sheep because they smell the blood, see the blood. Not a good thing that you want to do. So before you attempt to go out and help someone, I know you may be, um, hey, I made it through. I got to go. No, you need to sit, pull yourself together, hear from God. God may want to share some stuff with you. Oftentimes we're telling the Lord what we need him to do for us, but sometimes you need to sit, God, what do you want me to do? Show me where and what I need to correct so that way this doesn't happen again, that I don't go through this again, because it's not good for me. It's not good for the other person. Watch this. It's not good for the example that we want to leave our children. When you get ready to have a divorce or to do a divorce, you got to think about the things that come along with it. Just as when you're about to get married, you got to think of the things that come along with it. Not the marriage or the wedding day, but you got to look down the line. You got to look way down. Divorce, you got to look way down. Is what's going on something that I really need to divorce about? Or is this something that we can go in, get on the same page and correct and have a happy marriage going forward? If it's not, then you got to do what you got to do. Get out of that, sit yourself down, get yourself together, get healed. There's nothing wrong with getting healed. There's nothing wrong with that. So that way you're beneficial to other people and you can help someone else. You may go through something, and I'm done with this, for 30 years just to help somebody in 30 minutes.
Pastor Akins, thank
That's
you.
my Maury Povich deep thought. You're supposed
Okay.
to come in right there with something, just at the dead air. Oh, I guess that was dead air to let the people think. Let me say it again. So you might go through something for 30 years to help someone in 30 minutes.
Did you take your medication today? You need help.
No, I canceled my doctor's appointment to do this interview.
Well, I'm glad you wearing a real
called-
shirt today. You ain't wearing a fake shirt with shiny shoes.
There you go. Bless you. Thank you again for this opportunity to share. I pray that someone is blessed by this and that they are encouraged to continue on, and praying that the Lord would move upon your platform and Winning Wednesday as well, that his blessings be upon it and lives be blessed and encouraged by what you're doing by way of this platform.
Thank you again, Pastor Akins. I have enjoyed spending this few moments with you. So thank you again. And it was an honor to have you, especially as my pastor, and sharing your story today. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for joining Winning Wednesday today. I pray that you have been blessed. I pray that this has been a blessing to you. And please know that just because you are divorced, it's not a scarlet letter. It doesn't mean that it's the end of the world, that there is life after divorce and that you can make it. And as Pastor Akins said, take the time to sit down and heal so that your next relationship and marriage that you enter, you're healed, you're healthy, and you are whole. Happy Winning Wednesday. I love each and every one of you. If you are having a difficult time managing your divorce, if you're having a difficult time getting through your divorce, healing from your divorce, I am begging you to send me an email, send me a message, and I want to pray with you. Whenever you see it, whether it's today, whether it's next week, whenever you see it, I want to pray with you so that God can come in and heal. Again, this has been a blessing and an honor to share with you today. And as always, do something today that your future self will thank you for. Bye-bye.